On Friday, April 9th at 8:41 a.m., St. Vincent and Grenadines experienced the first explosive eruption of La Soufrière. What we have seen since that eruption has been nothing short of catastrophic. The communities of Chateaubelair, Fancy, Oya, Sandy Bay, and Georgetown have all been adversely impacted by the eruption of La Soufrière. We want you all to keep us in your prayers and be hopeful. We are a people of great pride. We have a lot of faith, and we do believe that once we work together, we can weather this challenging time together.
You're watching Caribbean Vibrations TV, coming to you from our studio, and today we're speaking to you about St. Vincent and the Grenadines and everything that's going on there. I'm very happy that we have a friend of the show, a personal friend of mine for a long time, love her bad. She is the country manager for Digicel for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Miss Fanta Williams. How are you doing today, Fanta?
Hi, Alan. Good. Today is a good day, and thank you very much for the opportunity to talk with you today. Yes, I am a friend of yours for too many years. The people will know our age, so we're not going to say. I know him a bit for a little while, but also definitely a friend of Caribbean Vibrations as well. So it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be talking to you.
Well, I really want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule, because I mean, St. Vincent and the Grenadines has been affected so much, and we up here, whether you're in Canada, the States, the UK, you're watching with bated breath and you're seeing all these videos, but I'd like to hear from you what's going on the ground.
It's, to take it, a few steps back. So we'll talk about what's been happening, because actually the volcano's been erupting over the last few months. So we would have started back in late November, early December. We would have had what's called an effusive eruption. And what that was doing is it was actually meant that the volcano was creating a brand new crust. So we would have a crust from the 1979 eruption. And then what started to happen is there was a shift and cracks started to occur, and then it started to build this new crust. So it had been effusing lava over the last few months and building this second crust, which really was indicative of there was a change in activity with the volcano. Now, everybody knows who lives in St. Vincent knows there's a live volcano in St. Vincent, but it had woken up and started to behave differently. This had been going on for a few months. And then, so we've had seismologists here from the University of the West Indies, pretty much from the beginning, the minute that happened. And they've been monitoring in a lot of different ways the behavior of the volcano. What we started to understand in April and probably just a few days leading up to the eruption is that things were starting to change. So some of the measurements that they were looking at started to have different characteristics. And some of it was indicative of previous eruptions, namely the ones that they're benchmarking are the 1902 and the 1979 eruptions. And it led them to believe that the best thing to do at this time was to start to have people mobilize for evacuation. Now, since January, these conversations were happening in communities with the National Emergency Management Organization. So people were understanding that they should prepare for this. But on April 8th, while we were actually in a National Emergency Steering Committee meeting, of which Digicel is a member, it was brought to our attention that we probably need to accelerate our plans. And then in the midst of that meeting, we actually got a call from Dr. Robertson, who is the lead seismologist on the ground, that said we needed to make a move immediately. And so grateful that, the government, the Prime Minister specifically said, you know what, if that's what we need to do, we need to lean on the experts and the science. And they mobilized at 4:30 that afternoon. They changed the category from orange to red. And with the red, the definition of red was immediate evacuation. And that meant that we were mobilizing approximately 20,000 people in 20% of the northern part of the island to evacuate. And then at approximately 8:41 in the morning, La Soufrière had its first explosive eruption. So that, just in terms of a time span, that can tell you how quickly we went from one, behavior of the volcano into another, and then how quickly a decision had to be made about how do we mobilize our people to get them out, and then just how finite amount of time we had, between that announcement and moving people en masse, and then when the explosive eruption happened. So that happened on Friday, April 9th. And, it's been a very, very different experience from then. I think what people need to understand about the situation is that it's very fluid. While we've had this explosive eruption, we've had 31 at this point, sorts of eruptions, where the volcano is actually expelling large amounts of ash and gases and so forth. And I mean, we were blanketed. The entire country, as you know, was blanketed in ash. There's still a tremendous amount of ash still in the red zone that's making it very challenging for anything really to live, including animals and people who may still be up there. There's a real decimation of vegetation, and as you know, this part of the country is actually very much based on agriculture. So a lot of our agriculture, bananas and all of root vegetables, etc., have all been decimated because of the situation. So, that being said, I think people need to understand that we're in this for the long haul. We don't have a timeline yet for when this ends. You have days where there's no eruptions. And for people outside of the red zone, and I think even somewhat outside of the orange zone, life continues as normal. And so there's a little bit of a challenge in that, because it appears that commerce is still going on, people are still going to work, but you still have about 20,000 people who can't go home and don't know when they'll go home. And that includes pregnant women and children and elderly and people who, have very challenging situations, whether it be non-communicable diseases such as diabetes and hypertension, or they may have specialized needs that also need to be met. And they're in a combination of government-run shelters as well as private homes where people have, kind of extended them hospitality. But nobody knows right now how long that could be. Now, we have, again, benchmarks from our previous eruptions. In 1979, we erupted for approximately 4 months. In 1902, it erupted for approximately 10 months. So you can go anywhere from 4 to 10 months in terms of, the behavior of this volcano. And then you start to think about all of the requirements in terms of need, etc. So, Digicel is in a unique position. Part of our DNA is really to be, humanitarian, is to provide humanitarian support. And that sometimes is not so much as us having to physically bring the items in and distribute them as we're doing now, but more importantly is to build the alliances and have the connections that help mobilize the experts in these fields of humanitarian support into the market. So we work in partnership with the government to do that. So I would say your first point of support, again, through the government would be NEMO, which is a National Emergency Management Organization, and they're working with a lot of the key NGOs to be able to mobilize the aid that's required in the market. If you're looking internationally, you're looking at, an organization such as the UN right now in the World Food Program, who are mobilized to raise $29.9 million US in aid to help, rebuild the red zone and also help sustain the aid that's going to be required over a longer period of time. There's a lot of energy right now. And I agree with you in that, it's phenomenal the way in which the entire diaspora has mobilized to support, a country of 100,000 people. It's amazing to see the boxes and the barrels and, everybody mobilizing. And, it always reminds you that, yes, we may be separate islands, but we're one Caribbean, And what, really warms my heart is that I came to St. Vincent 15 years ago looking for my roots and ended up sticking, and created my own roots. It is a beautiful country. It's a beautiful, beautiful place to visit. We have beautiful beaches. We have beautiful natural beauty, and the people here, they're warm, they're straightforward, they're hardworking, and they're very resilient. And so while this is a challenge for them, this is more about they're also just as mobilized as the diaspora is to rebuild their lives. And, the people that we're meeting with today, they're carrying a very heavy weight. It's one thing to not be in your home. It's another thing not to know if your home is still there. And then it's an even greater challenge to know when you will go home. And, there's a lot to be said in that. But even here on the ground, people are cooking every day, they're feeding people, the aid is getting in, there's fresh water. The utility companies are working night and day. They made sure that, we didn't have electricity loss for a long period of time. The minute that the water system could be turned back on, it has been safely. The water is safe to drink. But we also have brought in tanks and bottled water to make sure that if there is disruptions, that we can make sure that people have what they need. So I would say to you, one thing that Digicel is going to do is we'll put a list of organizations, reputable organizations where you can support, but they're the typical ones. SEDEMA is a great one to support. There's CARPHA, CARPHA is another Caribbean NGO. The OECS is mobilizing, the UN is mobilizing, World Central Kitchen is, and to just speak on them specifically for a second and why I think it's such a unique situation, more unique experience that they provide is they've set up a massive, restaurant style kitchen in our hospitality school. And they hire local caterers and chefs to cook the food. And then they provide the support, the infrastructure, the logistics to be able to make that scalable to feed, massive amounts of people over a period of time. Mm-hmm. And so what we'll be doing is working with them to come up with a unique system of being able to purchase meals that then can be delivered to persons who are displaced. I think it's very, very important, critical that people get a hot meal every day. That is our culture. That is intrinsic in who we are as a Caribbean people. And I think if we can do that for people every day, we give them a sense of normalcy that they need. In terms of getting the aid out to where it needs to be, we'll be working with all of the, the organizations that are on the ground, including NEMO, and some of the others that I mentioned before, to work collaboratively with them all to help get this aid distributed to those who need it the most. And in doing so, also get an assessment of what the ongoing needs will be as we navigate these very challenging times. The government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines has announced duty-free concessions on all relief supplies. If you're looking for a reputable organization to support, please reach out to the National Emergency Management Organization, NEMO, the SVG Red Cross, the Rotary Club, the Lions Club, the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, or any other established religious, charitable, and civic organizations. As we go on and we look at this long term, there's a lot of children who right now don't have a home. They're living in shelters or they're living with family members. And so one of the things that we've been talking about, Alan, is the importance of making children be children, giving them an opportunity to skip rope and, play jumping jack and, have a doll. There's so many little girls who might not have been able to walk away with a doll or something that comforts them, or a stuffed animal, or puzzles and, other games that they can play that are interactive, because I think it's very important to keep a sense of normalcy for children as much as you can, and play is therapy. So, personally, that's one of the things that, that I am using my platform to try to mobilize is things for children. We're looking at how do we start to celebrate children's birthdays when they're in shelters? So we need, Iron Man costumes and Spider-Man costumes and things that are just going to delight and put a smile on children's faces, because we must be mindful that this is their second pandemic, right? This is their second crisis. They've already lived through COVID for the last year. For the majority of the year, we've been doing remote learning. We've had pockets of face-to-face school, but for the most part, children have been, doing distance learning with their teachers. So they're very normalcy around school and seeing your friends every day and those kind of things was disrupted. And now you've put another level of disruption in their lives in terms of what's happening with the volcano. And because of the uncertainty of that, there's a lot of things that I think children need to process and need to work through. So, the Ministry of Health has some services that they are also, making available to persons. So they have counseling. The Ministry of Education is doing the same. So, we've helped with both their hotlines to make sure there's a point of, contact when people need support and assistance. But, the needs will diversify, right? Once you start to check the boxes of clean water, safe housing, and food, you start to need to diversify where the support is needed. So we also talked about something as simple as, things to comb your hair. Caribbean women love their hair. Caribbean women, like to know that they can, stay looking good. It's part of their identity. It's part of their self-esteem. So even looking at things like the ability to bring in products for them to be able to do that. Because again, we don't know how long they'll be displaced. And they may not have the money to be able to prioritize those things.
Yep.
So, I know it seems like it may be frivolous, but it's really not, because it starts to speak to the ability to keep people mentally positive and a frame of mind of hope, and focused on a positive future. And the longer we go through this situation, that can become challenging. So I think, what's wonderful for me is that I'm getting these kinds of platforms where I can speak about what's happening here. And I do it because, collectively, whether you do it through Digicel or not, for me is by no means important. It's to find an organization that speaks to your heart, speaks to your soul, carries the same ethos and thinking as you do, and support that and endeavor to do that for as long as you can, because we will need it for some time. Yeah. And so the ability to keep this situation on the airwaves, because we know, social media and all these things, everything has a short lifespan. But this is going to be, the support is going to be required for some time. And so we need to keep people thinking about the people in St. Vincent, and what we're going through long term.
I really just want to recognize the unsung heroes who really began to mobilize the minute the Prime Minister called on Thursday the order for evacuation. These persons sprung into action and mobilized right away to be able to start to understand how to first, get people out of the red zone and get them safe, and then begin the process of providing them shelter, providing them food and clothing. These are our local Calypsonians and entertainers and soca artists. And so even in this darkest of times, Vincentians have risen up in a way that is awe-inspiring, and it stands as a true example of resilience and dedication. And our job now is to find ways to support them.
Now, before we go, is there anything else you'd like to tell our viewers about St. Vincent or the future of St. Vincent right now?
I think what we're learning is that, it's like a boomerang, right? When you're pulled back, you're always propelled forward. So there's going to be, I think, massive opportunity for this country in terms of the support and the attention that we'll get internationally. And some of that has already started. We're the smallest country on the UN Security Council, which is, a massive feat to have accomplished. And it has given us, positioning on the world stage. This is a country that's really, it's already emerging, and it was already emerging into some, very unique and very key areas in terms of ICT and technology, as well as, the growth of our tourism product. And so there's so much talent here, young, talented people who are ready to take up that challenge. What I am so inspired by is how I've seen people mobilize, from local soca artists, our cultural ambassadors, our photographers, our caterers, our fashion designers, our people who are working in the industries of agriculture. All of them are mobilizing in ways that are using their gifts and talents and their networks to do what's right. And I haven't seen anything done poorly. I just think everybody's working to their best efforts. And so we are inspired. As a company, we're inspired. We can't do everything, and that's never going to be the intention. But our job is to communicate. Our job is to keep communication going. We consider ourselves an essential service. So our priority is always to make sure that our networks, whether our mobile network or fiber networks, are all up so that businesses and individuals can stay connected. And then we take that at a little bit of a further extension in that we're going to connect what is happening here with the world in any way and shape we can. And as market leaders, it's an opportunity for us to give back to people who really support this brand every day in many different ways and are committed to our success. We're committed to their survival in ways that we can, and that means leveraging with organizations and doing our part as a corporate citizen. We'll continue to do that. And for you, Alan, you're a voice of the Caribbean. You're not a son of any one island. You really are owned by all of them. And so you have a platform, I think, that gives us an opportunity to keep the diaspora, the rich and, vibrant and dynamic and mobilized diaspora, understanding what's going on here. And I'm very grateful to them. So on behalf of St. Vincent and all the people here and all the organizations and all the personal people who are benefiting from what they're doing, we are so grateful for how much they have mobilized. I think they have really set an extremely high bar for how we support each other. And it really is, we're really one mind in terms of the support. So we're very, very grateful for that.
Fanta, I really want to thank you for your time and all that great information you gave to us and our viewers.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure talking to you today. All the best.
Thanks again, and you're watching Caribbean Vibrations.
Thanks for watching Caribbean Vibrations. Follow us on social media at CaribVibe or visit our website, CaribbeanVibrationsTV.com. I'm your host and guide, Alan, and we'll see you next time on Caribbean Vibrations.